Good morning and welcome to the 2020 Esri User Conference. On behalf of Coralie Eagle and myself, we'd like to welcome you all to this virtual event. We're very excited to have you all here today, and the team have been working hard to bring together a great selection of technology insights and stories from across the region. Our growing GIS community remains very well connected, and we know many of you as business partners, customers, but also as friends. We also recognise that many of you and your organisations are going through challenging times right now, and we wanted to emphasise that Eagle are here to support your organisations through these times in a number of ways, including supporting you with skilled people and with software tools and other resources. As has been the case with previous emergencies, our own team have been very busy over the last 6 months assisting organisations with their own responses and recoveries to COVID. Again, like in other adverse situations, we have seen the use of technology take a massive leap forward, with adoption being driven where GIS technology can assist users to understand and plan for the impacts of COVID, by managing people and activities to best deal with these impacts. We consider it a privilege to work with and support so many amazing organisations, and we thank you all for your continued support and business. I know that one of the things which consistently motivates my team most is being able to work with you to do the amazing things that we do with technology. Your ongoing relationship with Eagle allows us to continue to invest in these technologies and solutions which are ultimately there to better serve your needs going forward. I do look forward to seeing you all face to face again one day, but in the meantime, I'd like you all to take the opportunity to engage with us and your fellow GIS community members virtually today, and to take the time to see the innovative things that many of you are doing across the region right now. Stay safe, everybody, and keep doing the amazing work you're doing. I'd like to thank you again and pass you over to Scott Campbell, your MC for the rest of the day.
Good morning. This year, as you can see, we've moved to a fully virtual conference. And so, of course, we don't get the chance to meet face-to-face, which we know has always been an important part of this event. However, we have done our best to make the whole event as engaging and connected as possible, and we've worked to bring together around 50 great technology and user stories, which we'll be sharing this morning and this afternoon. These stories represent the real breadth of our GIS community in New Zealand, and, as well as showing some great innovation, insight and hard work, we do hope that you'll be able to connect these to your own work. These stories are coming to you from presenters across New Zealand and beyond, from their own offices, homes and sometimes garages. So we're sure you'll understand if sometimes the visual or audio quality is not perfect. At the end of the day, it's the community and the stories that count, and which we are sure will shine through despite the COVID restrictions we have in place. One advantage of being virtual is that it allows so many of you to join us from wherever you're based. Today, we have over 900 registered attendees from across New Zealand, the South Pacific, and indeed further afield. This year's conference is complementary in both senses of the word. We wanted to remove any financial barriers to those attending, and we also wanted to build on top of the virtual user conference which was run by Esri in July. That conference showcased the latest ArcGIS technology, and here we'll be showcasing some of that same technology, but with a strong emphasis on the New Zealand stories and experiences. For those of you who've not yet had a chance to see some of those July presentations, many are available to be viewed online, and we'll be sharing links to some of those ones in the Information tab. On that point, before we get into the main content, I want to quickly share some tips on how to get the most out of today. The technology platform we're using for this event is designed to bring all of the things you need together in one place: presentations, related information, notes, Twitter feeds, help, and even a virtual sponsor and expo space. All of these can be accessed via the links on the left-hand side of your screen, and we do encourage you to use these to get as rich an experience as possible. Questions can be asked at any time, and while we don't have time to answer them verbally in the plenary, we'll be doing our best to answer these online. For the afternoon stream session, there'll be opportunities for you to ask questions and to have these answered by the stream's host. So after this morning's plenary, we have our lunch break, and then we move into session 1, which has 4 separate streams to choose from, followed by, after the second break, session 2 with 4 more streams. The agenda area allows you to see the streams being offered and select which ones you wish to join, including changing between streams if needed. You can do this at any time by going into the agenda and using the Change Stream Session button, followed by the Open button. Once viewing your screen, like now, you can increase the size of the window either by resizing the frame or by hitting the two squares in the top right corner and then maximizing the resulting window. This just helps you see the sessions in full screen and get the most out of it. Finally, we recognize that you may wish to view more than one of the streams running at the same time. And here, another benefit of being virtual is that you'll be able to watch the recording of any of the streams via this platform anytime over the next 2 weeks. This year's sponsors are organisations who've stepped up to help make this event happen. And alongside seeing them in the sessions directly, we do of course recommend that you check them out in the specific sponsors area of the platform, for example during the breaks. Here, you'll be able to learn more about what they each do and about the ArcGIS offerings they have. Again, to keep this interactive, you can connect with the exhibitors and have your questions answered. Now, while we don't have the physical expo area and the cool giveaways that you've seen in previous years, we have assigned a point scoring system to the various tabs and features throughout the entire platform, so please do explore. We'll be sending out prize packs to those who we see interacting well with the platform as a whole. That's enough on the housekeeping. We just wanted to make sure that you're getting the most from the event today. Let's now begin the main session by looking at the purpose of what we do. Not only the purpose of this event, which is to share and learn and connect as a community, but also the purpose of the technology that lies at the centre of that community, and indeed the work that the community itself does. Computer systems are typically designed to create digital versions of our real world. A real world which is itself an incredibly complex set of systems, interconnected, dynamic, and alive. From a geographer's perspective, we try to take the geography elements from that system and understand them alongside other disciplines, such as the various sciences. GIS allows us to use the ever-increasing power of computers to organize much of this information and knowledge, to organize it into layers, maps, databases, models, and workflows, and then to share these through other maps, stories, and dynamic reports. All of this happens in a cyclical way, with data capture and measurement being used in maps to visualize information, followed by typically this data being analyzed and placed into models. This can then be run to understand the impacts of a plan or a design. The results of these can in turn be provided to those making decisions in the form of reports or data-driven dashboards. And then ultimately, it's used to drive action. And then we go back to measurement yet again. While this all might sound very grand or abstract, this is the work that we see you doing every day. Whether you're working in conservation or crime prevention, asset management or marketing, city planning or engineering and construction. Collectively, this community is working to address many different issues across our region using WebGIS tools. As a modern WebGIS, ArcGIS relies upon the same GIS principles from 30 or more years ago. But it is so much more powerful. Building upon the advances in mainstream IT, coupled with advances in geospatial thinking, we can achieve so much more in our chosen areas of work. For example, we now have access to many more formats and sources of data, opening up potential for many, including those getting started with GIS, such as in schools and universities. These same advances enable us to connect to open data hubs and web services, and at the touch of a button, load all of the land parcels in New Zealand, or view an architectural design in 3D, or load and analyze a hot-off-the-satellite image from outer space. With data science as a hot topic, we can readily support users in advanced analysis workflows, both through machine learning libraries within ArcGIS and linking to external data science libraries. This has opened up potential for deep insight on massive data sets, leading to the unlocking of trends and predictions. Embedded GIS technology is supporting connected workflows, where our end users may not even know how to spell GIS, yet still enabling them to take advantage of these powerful capabilities within their own existing software applications. The still growing use of apps is allowing us to extend the GIS data capture, visualization, and analysis workflows out into the field, using the power of mobile devices and SDKs, coupled with web services and offline databases. Using modern web design techniques and technology, we can now produce highly engaging and intuitive interfaces, both in the form of web applications and real-time dashboards. Vastly improved sharing and collaboration tools are allowing us to easily connect with co-workers in our office, other offices, or other organisations located thousands of miles away, while always having confidence in the security of that information. And then good old cloud computing, enabling complex interconnected GIS systems to be deployed, linking people, capabilities and data sources in a way which can be described as a kind of infrastructure, in this case a geospatial infrastructure, which in turn can be used to support almost any use case. These advances continue, and a little later we'll look at them in more detail, but before we do, we wanted to move on to the first of our keynote stories, which illustrate how some of these advances are being used to help in the real world. Over the past 2 years, Eagle has worked with Federated Farmers of New Zealand, an organisation dedicated to supporting its over 13,000 members spread across the rural areas of New Zealand. It was clear that the work of Federated Farmers was largely spatial in its nature, and that ArcGIS had some great potential uses for the organisation and for its members. Terry Copeland is the Chief Executive of Fed Farmers, a role he's held for the last couple of years. He's very familiar with the agricultural world, having been the Chief Executive of Young Farmers, where he was responsible for building its membership base and significantly increasing member participation. Today, we've asked Terry to join us and to share some of his stories on how ArcGIS is being used in a variety of ways, including in supporting its members in times of emergency.
Hi, my name's Terry Copeland and I'm the Chief Executive of Federated Farmers. I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about how we use Esri and ArcGIS, the impact it has on our business, our ability to better communicate with our members, our stakeholders and indeed the regulators. Today I want to talk about three main areas and how we utilise this technology. One being in the adverse event space, how we can shape our response to the conditions that often are changing on a minute-by-minute basis. The second area is we had quite a bit to do this year around Moving Day or Gypsy Day for the dairy industry. The challenges of COVID-19 right in the middle of planning how we're going to shift farmers and stock around the country, which the dairy sector needs each year. And the third one is how do we use ArcGIS and Esri to bring to life the issues raised by changes in legislation, whether it be council submissions that we need to put forward, or whether it's great big policy statements from government where either unintended consequences affect farmers in a way that wasn't intended and therefore can be a problem, or in fact to show the cost implications of some of the desired outcomes. So the first area I want to talk about is adverse events, and probably the biggest dynamic for us is time. We don't have a lot of time in order to react to what response mechanisms are needed, particularly in those first 24 hours. So utilizing technology like GIS mapping gives us the ability to understand the scale of the problem. Two examples from 2019 which are really relevant to how we operate today. First one being the Nelson fires, where the fire front itself was a little bit of an unknown quantity. We didn't know how bad it was going to get, how the wind patterns were going to shape the fronts, were they going to change boundaries, were they going to grow, how many properties sit within it, how many properties go in or out of a cordon. So working with Eagle, we were able to identify pretty early on the main front of how many properties were involved inside that cordon and what we would need to do to respond. Interestingly for us, using that example, we worked out a unique situation for us where in a rural situation, the vast majority of properties affected by this fire were in fact lifestyle blocks rather than mainstream farms. And that opens up a whole lot of new challenges for us and the emergency services on how do you work in an adverse event with small-scale farms or companion animals or sometimes different kinds of animals than we're used to get them off property if we need to, what provisions are needed. So we've utilised the learnings that we've had from those Nelson fires and created a new category of membership for those block owners to belong to Federated Farmers so we can help them. The thing about the Nelson fires is as the fire front continued to grow, the 90 odd properties that were inside, we needed to make decisions on what could be, what animals could stay, what animals needed to be evacuated, how many properties had multiple dwellings. Now, not just for us, of course, the emergency services need that for human life. Our main impact in contributing to the response is that animal welfare area, assisting MPI in decision making on the needs of those particular landowners. The second area, and I've got some slides to show which really can illustrate the benefit of being able to map both 2D and 3D. The impact of what an adverse event could do was the West Coast floods of 2019. The first thing is that we utilised some predictive technology and thought, okay, the flood, we know what the weather system is doing. We could then look at the scale of when that impacts the ground, how many properties are going to be affected. Of course, that's important so that along with emergency services, if we understand the scale of how big that is, we can dedicate resources to assisting the farmers to do the right things for their animals. We predicted that there was going to be about 903 properties within that flood zone. That makes it a pretty big scale. When you're committing resources, when you're working with other organisations, so obviously not just us and not just civil defence, but when you bring in, for example, Fonterra or Beef and Lamb or Dairy NZ into sharing some of the contact to the farmer directly, you know, one organisation is not going to be equipped to deal with that sort of magnitude. Now, luckily for us, the actual number of properties that were affected by that flood was only 7. I wish all adverse events had a high probability and a low actual. It doesn't always work that way. But what that did do, once we identified those 7 properties, and we're already now into the event, was we could pinpoint those exact 7 properties, what their boundaries are, where their access points are, what this farming system was, how many animals are on there, how many people, how many dwellings. The really good thing is that information is captured live and can be sent through to a responder's phone. So if the Fonterra, could they have their own response group? If they were going to a Fonterra supplier farm, they could actually have that information in their phone as they're driving towards that property. And if something changed, we need to update that information. That gets sent straight down the ether straight to that person's phone. That is invaluable information. The great thing also is that information is being fed from a number of sources, and utilising ArcGIS and Esri is that you can actually take multiple information sources and combine those into one map or one graphic that illustrates the issue. That's invaluable for us. So the second area I want to talk about was the work we did around moving day. So as I said at the start, a whole chunk of the dairy industry moves on one particular date of the year. Particularly if you're a share milker, you'll take your herd of cows with you most often. And what are the impacts around that? Now, in any normal year, it's of little consequence worrying about how that plays out. We've had decades of proven success in being able to move people and animals around the country. Factor in COVID-19 and all of a sudden you think, oh, okay, what are we going to do if farmers can't shift their animals? There's a whole chain, a bit like selling a house, there's a whole chain often of people buying and selling for one transaction to go through. So we realised that farmers probably weren't going to be able to shift if we didn't get confidence of 3 particular ministries to sign off on a program of work where farmers were able to shift themselves and their animals, those being the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Transport and the Ministry for Primary Industries. So again, working with Esri and ArcGIS, we looked at surveying our members to see, first of all, what's the scale of this issue? How many people are shifting? And we know anecdotally there's about 1,200 or so shifts every year. And we thought, well, if we do a quick survey out to our members, we can quickly determine what the scale is. The second part was the scope of that. So how much geographic spread is there around the country and where are people moving to and from? So being able to map the start and finish of that particular movement for each of those 400 odd people was going to be quite valuable for us. We also thought that most of the movements, just anecdotally, are the big dairy areas of the country. So, you know, Waikato, Taranaki, Canterbury, they're going to be the main sources. But actually, when you start to map it, you see the whole country is affected. And therefore, getting sign-off from Ministry of Transport was going to be critical, particularly when there's quite often a number of very large geographic transfers from point to point. We know, for example, just from our survey alone, and we added an extra question late in the piece, so it's probably even more than this number, but 35 of our 400 respondents were actually crossing the Cook Strait to get their animals or their farm to shift. And so what impacts are there during COVID-19? So not only was there getting permission to shift and all the implications around that, but also preparing the ferry companies in this particular case, which is why we added that question of inter-island transfer. We know that one of the inter-island companies has decided to use this COVID time to do a bit of refurbishment on their ships. So the number of ships available had reduced quite significantly. So we had to make sure that our members didn't just leave things for the last minute assuming they could get across like they have every other year. And then what do we do with that data? Now we've done it once, I think there's immense value of being able to map that year on year and hopefully get a much bigger number of surveyed farms to see what transfers look like. If we can be able to show each year the point-to-point transfers and what they look like, there might be some learnings about how we do it better, what efficiencies can be made. Everything that we do as an organisation, everything that farmers do, usually centres around animal welfare. So the more we can learn about animal movements, the better we can make that process. And this system's been invaluable. And the third area we use ArcGIS for is being able to totally understand the impact of regulations that either council or government provides us. We often need to see what the impact at a catchment area or a region area or per farm area or the whole country. So for example, if there's some regulations that talk about fencing waterways, we need to know what the impact of that is. Most of the time the government will provide some economic impact assessments around what these rules will provide. We often will go back and say, actually, they've totally underestimated that, and we can demonstrate that. Using this technology of Esri and ArcGIS, we can actually show in a way that's easily understood what these impacts are. So one such example is under the current Essential Freshwater program that's being rolled out at the moment, and there's a whole number of years worth of work ahead. The MPS talks about, for example, every parcel of land that's more than 10% average slope needs to have its waterways fenced, which sounds pretty reasonable. But a parcel of land that has 60% of it dead flat and the rest of it's on quite heavy slope might average 10%. And therefore being able to demonstrate that from a map is going to be critically important. Also, from an economic point of view, for a farmer to understand what they might be hit with, if they've got a braided river going through their farm, and we've got an example of that to show today, what would be the economic cost of fencing significant river boundaries or stream boundaries when they're braided for the farmer? Now, that's not to say the environmental need is there, but we need to be able to warn that farmer that actually you're up for a huge cost which might not be viable for you to do it. You might then decide to do something different with your land or sell the land off for something else. But then the value of that land drops if it requires fencing because there's the amount of water going through the property. So the Riversdale property in the Wairarapa is a really good example of that, and being able to demonstrate that and show it's going to be able to give us the ability to either talk with government or talk with councils specifically about a property. And when you do it in a way that either does it by 3D or 2D, but 3D particularly, when you're factoring in slope, reading a map is one thing, but being able to see the impact of slope on a map in a 3D situation is going to be really helpful to convey what the issues that we're trying to convey. Now, this is not a get out of jail card for us or for farmers. This is just a tool for us to be able to demonstrate what the issues are and how do we actually get to an agreed area where sensible outcomes that satisfy the objectives of why we've got legislation in the first place, but allows the farmer to continue to farm. They're important things for us. So those are just three areas that we utilize this technology, and we're really grateful that as we're very early on our journey to utilize the likes of Esri and ArcGIS, we're just delighted that a company like Eagle can help us unlock a whole lot of information that's going to be really valuable to ourselves, our members, and our relationship with stakeholders out there. As I say, we are late to the table with technology. I think there's other applications we can use this stuff that's going to benefit our organisation. The more that we can show visually and real time of data, the better off everybody's going to be in terms of planning, in terms of response to things, and in terms of engagement, where a wide background and commitment from a wide group is needed, and that's certainly been demonstrated in the last 6 months.
Thank you, Terry. As you can see, despite being relatively new to GIS, the Fed Farmers team are making great strides in a number of areas and really making a difference to their members' work. We want to change direction now and look in more detail at the technology. We call this section Our Work, as it represents the collective work of ourselves, our counterparts around the globe, and Esri. This work is really driven by two main aims: creating useful GIS technology and helping our users to be successful. To show us some of the outputs of this work, I'm going to ask the Technical Solutions team to give us an update on the latest ArcGIS technology by showing what's possible using New Zealand scenarios and data. I'm going to start us off. I'm going to pass across to Megan Chong in Wellington to cover what's new in ArcGIS Online. Megan.
Thank you, Scott. ArcGIS Online is Esri's premier GIS and location intelligence platform. It's the world's largest mapping ecosystem, and it's growing, with thousands of new items added every day. Some of the highlights of the latest updates include improved map viewer features, which I'll cover in the demo, improvements to extensions such as Analytics for IoT, which brings together different live feeds and analyzes them in the cloud, as well as the release of ArcGIS notebooks, which are no longer in beta and available to all ArcGIS Online organizations, allowing you to dig deep into your data with over 300 Python libraries for powerful spatial analysis, all within your browser. Coming up, stay tuned as we will have greater inter-organizational collaboration capabilities and hosted imagery, to name a few. So let's dive into the demo now. Here I have some property insurance data of Lower Hutt from CoreLogic, and this is symbolized by the estimated rebuild costs. Yellow dots represent lower rebuild costs, and orange dots represent higher costs. If we open up the attribute table, we can see there are around 35,000 records. That's quite a lot. So let's turn on clustering to get a simplified view of our data. With just one click, the new map viewer makes clustering quick and easy, and it lets us control different parameters such as the size and the radius. I can even modify the cluster label so it makes more sense to the viewer. Instead of showing the total number of features within a cluster, I can instead show the average rebuild cost. And if I use Arcade, I can provide more context. Opening up at the Arcade editor, I can add a $sign. The result is a map that draws faster, scales dynamically, and lets us pick out patterns easier among thousands of data points. My map is now ready to share. Moving on to a different type of visualization now, and one of my favorite features, Cartographic Blending. One common issue that users may have is when adding a colorful and rich polygon layer, like this vibrant soils layer from Environment Canterbury showing soil permeability, we want to show the terrain underneath. Previously, to work around this, we would need to increase the transparency of the top layer. However, as you can see, this results in a washed out effect, not the most visually appealing. With the new map viewer's cartographic blending, I can choose from 32 blend modes. This means I'm able to amplify the underlying hillshade while letting the colorful soil layer on top shine. So now we can clearly see that soils at higher elevations are often characterized as having more rapid permeability. Canterbury also has the greatest area of irrigated land in New Zealand. Within the group layer, which by the way is another new feature, I'm going to turn on this layer showing irrigated areas. We can see it draws on top. But if we want to produce a map for agricultural scientists who are just focusing on irrigated land, it might not be the cleanest example. With cartographic blending, I can choose to blend the soils layer and emphasize the irrigated areas, and thereby making them the subject of my map. As expected, irrigated areas are found in lower lying areas where farmland would be located, and with moderate permeability. Now in a few clicks we have a vibrant, textured and focused map in a matter of seconds. without having to use complex analysis tools to show what is important to your end users. So that was a whirlwind overview of 2 new key features of the map viewer in Arcgis Online. I'll pass it over now to Ed, who will take us through a tour of Experience Builder. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Megan. Built on version 4 of the Arcgis API for JavaScript, Arcgis Experience Builder empowers you to quickly transform your data into compelling web apps, all without having to write a single line of code. You can build map-centric or non-map-centric apps and display them on either fixed or scrolling screens on single or multiple pages. By performing drag and drop operations, you can choose the tools you need from a rich set of widgets. From this, you can design your own templates, all to interact with your 2D and 3D content. And this is just within one app. With Arcgis Experience Builder, your web apps look great and run seamlessly on mobile devices. These truly are web apps as we know them, reimagined. So how does it work? I'm going to run you through how you can use Experience Builder to elevate your work and deliver compelling, content-focused web experiences with minimal effort. The first step is to start with a template. This allows us to quickly build apps with features such as an integrated 2D and 3D map. We can then modify the layout and the look and feel of this app. While I'm doing this, at any point in the process, I can test how it's going to look to my end user through the live view. This is an application showing the University of Auckland index of multiple deprivation data, showing the decile ranking for each neighbourhood based on their level of deprivation. Apps built with Experience Builder run on a variety of devices, as you can see. We can even optimise the mobile experience. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to remove the toolbar using the pending button. So when I go back to the live view, you'll see that when my mobile users are using this app, there's no toolbar. However, for desktop users, you'll see that it remains. Experience Builder is not only about building web apps though. It's about building web experiences. This includes utilising pages and having pages populated with components such as text, images, maps, and apps, including Survey 123, Story Maps, and Operations Dashboard. On my canvas, I'm adding a map showing major chains of fast food outlets across New Zealand. I'm wanting to develop a quick single-page experience for a researcher as they gather questionnaire information. The topic of this research is the relationship between the level of deprivation and usage of local fast food locations. To allow understanding of an area to the researcher while they're interviewing, I'm going to add a list widget. You can see that this already comes with a template that connects to the layer on the map. I can then set up dynamic text, so based on the extent of my map, you'll see a different value pop up based on the branch locations within that area. Action triggers are what make the widgets on this page talk to each other. So I'm going to add a trigger to make the map pan to a selected feature when a user clicks on it on the list. I'm also going to add some UX and UI enhancements, such as easily aligning widgets to fit the full width of the page. Since this is an experience geared towards data collection, I'm going to add a survey using an existing Survey 123 form from my organisation. This is all looking pretty much complete, so lastly I'm going to add a menu, and what this allows is me to connect this page back to the app we built previously. And now when I'm back in a live view, you'll see that when I click on a branch location, the Survey 123 form and the list widgets will respond accordingly, based on the action that we've set up. So now we're ready to provide our feedback. If we spend a little bit more time, we could create a complete web experience, like this one shown. You can see that not only do we have maps, but we also have links to several other pages created. And these are showing different domains that contribute to an overall deprivation score for an area across the country. And this is an experience available, of course, across desktop and mobile. So many of you have been using Web App Builder in the past. However, now is the time to start getting into Experience Builder. You can see that you can do more. You can easily build templates, and the solutions that they provide can help give fully immersive experiences to not just you, but other members of your organisation. That's a quick wrap up of how Experience Builder works, I now want to hand you over to Lauren. Over to you.
Cheers, Ed. Hey everyone, so Local Maps. Now Local Maps 2.3 was released at the end of last year, introducing greater reporting capabilities, as well as some cool new widget updates. Now since the start of this year, we've been working hard and listening to you, the Local Maps user community, and actively working on a 2.3.1 quality patch that's going to be coming out later this month. Now this patch includes various quality fixes, as well as some cool new features like support for arcade and feature queries, and the ability to have an automatic login. But right now, let's just crack into the good stuff. So Local Maps is composed of three key parts. You have a searchable gallery indexing content from your Arcgis Online or Arcgis Enterprise, web-based simple-to-use admin tools, and a custom web app builder application designed to be slick and intuitive to all users. This here is the Know Your Property viewer. Skinned the same as other maps in my gallery, this is a bit different as we only have two layers in our map, a property and a flood layer, which we'll explore later. So remember that, just two layers. So I can just go ahead and search for my address. And you can see here that I've got the core property information, but also a plethora of other related information. This is utilizing Local Maps feature queries, allowing us to go off to different data sources, whether spatial or aspatial, and pull back related information. So we have valuation details, Lynn's parcel information, demographic information coming from Stats NZ, and then we have school enrolment zones coming from the Living Atlas. In addition to this, we also have rich property and building detail from our data sponsors CoreLogic that you will have seen earlier in the Arcgis Online demo. Now this shows us fine-grained information like living room size, number of rooms, roof material, etc. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. They have leveled down to heating sources, tanks, sheds. It's really cool data and super valuable for property owners. But where this information becomes really interesting is when you couple it with factors like hazard risk and a property's vulnerability to claiming these rebuild costs. This flood score dataset is also provided by CoreLogic, and it helps to show this. So in Lower Hutt, the possibility of these events happening and having a very significant cost impact on properties is higher. Now you also would have noticed this flood score data looks very cool, dynamic, and it immediately gets the point across. It uses Arcade, which has been cleverly put together by Samuel Price at CoreLogic. Now Local Maps supports the use of Arcade and feature queries. But we're all visual people, so in addition to the tabular data, CoreLogic's flood layers allow us to really see the extent of what properties are at risk. Now it's great to have a one-stop shop, but sometimes you need to have a physical copy of this as well. Local Maps reporting allows you to easily pull together a panel of information like this and generate a rich report, allowing you to bring the same data in, but move and arrange elements. And in some cases, you might want to build a conditional statement to include values where they intersect, like that CoreLogic property detail we just saw is now in a paragraph here. The values have been inserted where they meet the criteria. Now, thanks again to CoreLogic for being a data sponsor this year. And if you want to know more about their property or flood data, just head to the virtual CoreLogic booth in the Sponsors tab. Now you're going to hear from Sam about some other more focused apps in the platform, the ArcGIS Field apps.
Well, thanks for that, Lauren. There is a vast array of configurable, off-the-shelf apps included with ArcGIS, but our apps for field operations are designed for mobile devices, including iOS and Android platforms. Because they are native applications, they leverage the capabilities and sensors on your mobile devices, including cameras and location services like GPS. And most importantly, the apps can work offline in disconnected environments. While there are many new capabilities and updates to our apps across the board, let's take a look at what's new to Quick Capture and Survey 123 and introduce a new integrated app we're releasing later this year called ArcGIS Field Maps. ArcGIS Quick Capture is the fastest way for users to collect field observations. With this simple app, you can quickly record field observations from a moving vehicle while you scout locations, conduct aerial surveys, or assess damage. Features are being progressively added to the Quick Capture app for iOS and Android, and along with support for webhooks, new features brought to Quick Capture this year include update notifications to workspaces, and a new split screen mode on tablets to view buttons and maps side by side shown here in the animation. The new peer-to-peer project sharing allows users to share Quick Capture projects from one device to another by sharing a link or displaying a QR code for users to scan. ArcGIS Quick Capture is now also available on the Microsoft Store. We've also made enhancements to the Quick Capture Designer, including being able to collaboratively design on a Quick Capture project by sharing them with other users, and disabling or enabling the ability for users to edit locations in the app. Survey 123 is one of our most popular applications for field staff and office staff to capture information using a smart form. Vector base maps are now supported in map question types. As your Arcgis organisation is likely making more use of vector base maps, Survey 123 will now be able to render them automatically. And vector base maps look much crisper and are also more lightweight, which drastically reduces the size of your offline Survey 123 forms. You can now configure image and file questions to allow multiple photos and attachments to be submitted. Until now, image and file questions in Survey 123 allowed end users to take a single photo or only attach a single file. Workarounds, including having many image questions nested in a large repeat, are now solved. So authors of forms can now allow users to take multiple photos or attach multiple files all within a single question. There are also new question types available, including the new ranking question type. The ranking question allows users to compare items within a list and sort them in order of preference. And based on the order selected, each item gets a numeric score. And that's a nice new capability that will be useful for public-facing surveys designed for receiving feedback on proposals. It's only supported in web forms for now. When it comes to analysing your data, we've made some updates to a popular new feature in Survey 123 called Feature Reports. Reports is a way to generate high-quality documents from records submitted from the Survey 123 app and export them as PDF or Word documents. New summary and statistics sections now allow you to create reports that include many survey records and statistics about all of those survey responses. For example, you could create a single report that includes all inspections ever performed or all inspections in the last week. In this demo, you can see an intended workflow where a summary section is used in a report to present a collection of survey records. And that report is generated against all of the electric distribution poles, in this case, that have been inspected, and it breaks down inspections into colour-coded tables called summary sections, and there's one for each condition assessed. We've also reduced the price Survey 123 feature reports. Survey 123 feature reports are an Arcgis Online premium service, but we've reduced that price from 2.5 credits down to 0.5 credits per report. There are also new updates to the Survey 123 website for administrators of Arcgis organisations. When you log into the Survey 123 website as an Arcgis administrator, you will notice that a new organisation page is available, which provides access to all surveys published in your organisation. And from here you can search for and manage surveys created by other users. From the organisation page, you'll also find a Settings tab. And the Settings tab is a whole new approach to managing the global settings and default behaviour for all Survey 123 forms that have been published by your organisation. For example, you can define a collection of base maps that should be included in the base map switcher in the app. And it's also from here in the organisation settings that you can now also require all users of the Survey 123 field app to update the surveys in their mobile device when a new update is made available. A very quick update on our other applications, including Explorer, Collector and Tracker. Arcgis Collector now includes support for snapping to points and viewing your location history from Arcgis Tracker. To better support our users who often go into disconnected areas for their work, Arcgis Explorer now includes the ability to create offline map areas from within the app, and Arcgis Workforce has been updated to support offline workflows too. During our road ahead section towards the end of this morning's plenary, I'm going to be back and demonstrating a brand new application that we're really excited to introduce called Arcgis Field Maps. Arcgis Field Maps will be Esri's premier mapping application for iOS and Android devices. And Field Maps will combine the existing capabilities of our apps for field operations into a single mobile application that is easy to use and simple to deploy. So please stick around for our road ahead section where we'll have a sneak peek of Arcgis Field Maps and what it means for you. But for now, let's head over to Julian to hear what's going on with Arcgis Pro.
Cheers, Sam. Back in July, we saw the release of Arcgis Pro 2.6, the latest version of Esri's desktop application for GIS professionals. Similar to previous releases, Esri have included a variety of new tools, functionalities, and enhancements. However, in this version in particular, I think we can all agree that there are some truly standout features. And today, I'd like to share a couple of these with you. First up are a few quality enhancements to aid you with your BAU processes. Arcgis Pro 2.6 now supports autosaving. By default, a backup of your project is created every 5 minutes, mitigating the risk of any lost analysis results or project configuration. And by going to the project settings, you can specify your own recovery interval. Keeping with the theme of quality enhancements, Arcgis Pro now allows you to update existing web maps in your portal using the new Save Web Map feature. To do so, open a web map in Arcgis Pro from the Catalog pane, add additional layers or analysis results, and take advantage of Pro's advanced symbology capabilities. Here I'm symbolizing fault awareness zones with a hatched fill. And let's adjust the extent to focus on Kaikoura. And when it's complete, I can click the Save Web Map button to save my changes back to the web map in my portal. This workflow allows you to seamlessly work between both web and desktop environments. And now jumping back to Arcgis Online, if I hit my refresh, my web map and all associated apps have instantly updated. Now moving on to some of the shiny new features, Arcgis Pro 2.6 introduces the new Interactive Suitability Modeler. Found in the Analysis tab, this tool enables you to identify the best site locations or areas to preserve based on a selection of weighted input rasters. For the GIS professionals among us, many of us will be familiar with the process of site selection. However, this process has been vastly refined with a dynamic exploratory environment of interacting panes, plots, and maps. Whether you're trying to find the most productive crop for a plot of land, or perhaps identify locations at risk of wildfires, the Suitability Modeler will help you to produce a visual output efficiently. Also new with this release are trace networks. Trace networks are used to model the flow of resources through simple connectivity models such as rail and hydro networks. You can convert an existing geometric network or create a new trace network with just a few clicks. In this example, I've created a trace network based on NZEUEC's River Environment Classification dataset. By enabling network topology, I can perform advanced tracing analytics to trace upstream and downstream based on a defined location. This can be particularly helpful if I wanted to perhaps trace the downstream implications of a flash flood or the potential upstream source of a water contaminant. And last, but certainly not least, with what I think is one of the coolest new additions to Arcgis Pro 2.6 is a new layer type, Voxel Layers. And to show these off, I'd like to pass over to Josh, one of our 2020 interns.
A voxel layer represents multi-dimensional spatial and temporal information in the form of a 3D volumetric visualization, essentially bringing Minecraft to the realm of GIS. Voxel layers are constructed based on NetCDF files, a raster format commonly used to represent multi-dimensional scientific data such as temperature, atmospheric emissions, groundwater supplies, or perhaps subsurface geology. In this example, I've sourced a multivariate NetCDF file of global ecological marine units, EMUs for short. And here you can see how surface seawater salinity varies across space. However, by creating a local scene and clicking Add Multidimensional Voxel Layer, I can visualize that same information in 3 dimensions using voxels. And if I zoom in, you can see how this information is built up of tiny 3D cubes. And if your data is also time enabled, you can view how your variables change over time. And finally, I can further explore the depths of my data by using the slice and section tools. So there you have it, a few of the exciting new additions to Arcgis Pro version 2.6. I believe we're now heading over to James with drones. Take it away, James.
Thanks for those awesome demos, Julian and Josh. Hi, I'm James Wright from the Technical Solutions team. I'd like to demo for you today a new product within the ArcGIS platform, SiteScan for ArcGIS. SiteScan is a complete end-to-end cloud-based drone solution. From planning and autonomously capturing data with the SiteScan flight planning app, to processing, managing and analyzing with a cloud-based application, to disseminating and collaborating with the ArcGIS platform. Let's jump into a demo now. Now in the SiteScan for ArcGIS flight planning application. Here I can view a multitude of different flight paths depending on what type of data I want to capture. I can also view pre-planned flights that have been created for me either in the office, by my colleagues out in the field, or myself. Here I'm going to select a Christchurch building to do a perimeter scan of it. I can see here that my flight's already been created for me around a specific building in the Christchurch Central Business District. What's great about this application is I can bring in ArcGIS Online layers from my own account into the application to give myself context of where I want to fly. I can also view this in 3D. Here I can view that same building with my flight path marked in green, as well as different camera angles that it's going to capture. This is great for visualizing exactly where your drone is going to fly, in this case to avoid nearby buildings and to make sure you're covering the right area. I can also view key statistics about my flight, such as how long it might take, how many images might be captured, the resolution, as well as how many batteries that drone is going to use. I'm now happy with my settings. All I need to do now is hit fly. My drone will complete some automatic pre-flight checks and then autonomously take off. Let's take a look now. The drone is now autonomously taking off and heading to its designated flight path that we just set. I can view that same flight path as the drone flies in 3D. Once the drone completes its designated flight paths and its multiple paths here, it'll automatically return to home and land for us. Here's the drone doing that just now. Once the drone is on the ground, it's time to process and analyze in the cloud. Once the flight is complete, we can pull those images straight off the drone, ready to upload to the cloud in this manager here. Let's go ahead and upload all these images and take a look inside the SiteScan Manager application. That captured imagery is now being sent to the SiteScan's elastic cloud processing infrastructure, where multiple different image products such as orthomosaics, point clouds and 3D meshes will be automatically generated and auto-rectified to the correct location. All of this happens while I head back to the office, and then I'll receive an email once it's ready to go. But now I want to take a look at some different data for a different use case. This use case being a mock search and rescue exercise of some steep and hilly terrain where humans might not be able to get to so easily. A perfect use case for flying up a drone to get an understanding of both the terrain and what's hidden behind places you might not be able to see otherwise. So here we are in SiteScan for ArcGIS's web manager, where I can view imagery that's being captured across my organization for multiple different projects, all inside a lightweight internet browser. Here we have my search and rescue operation with the orthomosaic automatically generated and auto-rectified to the correct location. I can view all of the raw photos that have been captured for that flight, as well as information from the digital elevation models such as contours, so my team can get a gauge of how steep the terrain is, as well as the elevation model to get a sense of the elevation change over the side. I also have a selection of tools available to me, such as the Photo Inspect tool, where I can select a location on the map and then SiteScan will bring up all of the associated raw drone images of that location, where I can zoom up close to get a better sense of what's on the ground. I also have 3D volumetric tools available to me, where I can create an area of interest and get accurate 3D volume calculations of that area. Think uses for accurate measurements of stockpiles, for example. And again, all of this inside a lightweight browser. Now to my 3D point cloud. This was also generated at the same time as my orthomosaic. And now I have similar tools available to me to interrogate this data. A particularly useful tool for a search scenario is the profile tool. My team can get an accurate sense of what sort of terrain they're going to be up against in this search area. And now to my final 3D product, a 3D mesh that was generated at the same time as well. This is a nice lightweight 3D visualization of my search area that can be shared with those that need to see it. And that leads me to my final steps of the workflow. With a couple of clicks, I can now share these information products to people across my ArcGIS Online organization. This speeds up the process of getting this vital intel to those that need it most. This has been a really quick overview of SiteScan for ArcGIS, a complete end-to-end cloud-based drone solution. If you want to find out more, I'll be going through SiteScan in a little bit more depth in the imagery and drone session this afternoon. But for now, that's it from me.
Now let's talk about ArcGIS Enterprise. ArcGIS Enterprise is the WebGIS platform on your infrastructure of choice. And the latest release of ArcGIS Enterprise, 10.8.1, features a lot of new possibilities and enhancements. And I'd like to highlight a couple here. There have been many user experience improvements in this release. Sharing items is now more intuitive, and it's also easier to see with what group an item is shared. There's a simplified interface for creating new items, and you can now hide group members in groups and add content to the group right from the groups page. Also, the organization setting now has a better, clearer user experience. And this release also features new apps that you've seen before in ArcGIS Online. You can now create new experiences using the ArcGIS Experience Builder. And also the new Map Viewer Beta is now available for ArcGIS Enterprise. And you can use the new story maps to create compelling stories. And new capabilities have also been added for administration. You're now able to set site and access notices to inform people of upcoming updates, new content, or ask to accept the privacy statement. It's also easier to onboard new members using the new member defaults by setting the default user type, user role, and default add-on licenses. And for organizations that use multiple deployments of ArcGIS Enterprise, you can now migrate content using groups between, for example, your test and production environment. And the last thing I would like to highlight here is that from this ArcGIS Enterprise 10.8.1 release, you now have access to a selected set of Arcgis Living Atlas data for New Zealand in your own ArcGIS Enterprise. And that is actually a nice segue into the next topic, which is Arcgis Living Atlas. Because as you all know, data or content is at the basis of all GIS work. And Arcgis Living Atlas is the biggest collection of geospatial data that is ready to use. It includes base maps, demographic data, satellite imagery, live traffic and weather data, and much, much more. The Living Atlas for New Zealand is also constantly growing with layers, maps and apps, specifically focused on New Zealand. I would like to highlight a couple of new layers that are available in Arcgis Living Atlas. And I would like to start with the base maps. We've been adding new vector base maps to the lineup of base maps in New Zealand. And these base maps are crisp, fast, and a lot smaller for when you want to take them offline on your mobile device. We currently have the topographic style, canvas maps, and the navigation base map, with many more styles to come. And they use the best available data from LINS, OSM and other sources. And the great feature is that you can change the layout of the base map straight from the map viewer. For example, turn layers off or change the colors used to symbolize features. You can also define what base maps you would like to see in the base map gallery of your organization. And that can be a combination of world base maps, New Zealand base maps and your own. Another base map I would like to mention here is the most popular base map in New Zealand, and that's the New Zealand Imagery base map. And this base map in NZTM is built using all the available publicly owned imagery and is being updated on a regular basis. Recently, we have, for example, added Waikato Rural, West Coast Rural, Hamilton Urban, and a lot more imagery. And very soon we'll be adding imagery from Canterbury, Porirua City and more. Next to base maps, new feature layers are constantly being added to the Rds Living Atlas. Currently you'll find boundary layers, demographic data from the 2018 census, building outlines, parcels, and many more layers. And the data is updated regularly. For example, the base data layers from LINS are updated every week in line with the LINS data service. There are a few new layers that I would like to highlight here. The first is the New Zealand Fire and Emergency Localities layer. And this is a layer that has been requested for a long time, and LINS and FENS have worked together to make them part of the Arcgis Living Atlas. And once you've added them to the map, you can change the symbology, update the pop-ups or add labels. For example, I can make the boundary lines red without a fill, and add labels to show the suburb names. Another new set of layers are the OpenStreetMap layers for New Zealand. And these layers hold a lot of data contributed by the OpenStreetMap community. You'll find shops, roads, buildings, amenities, and many more. And you can easily create a more focused map by setting filters to only show the features you're interested in. Also, these layers are updated every minute with data added to OpenStreetMap. And I'd like to finish off with a final request to all of you. If you or your organization has authoritative data, maps or apps, you can help the New Zealand GIS community by making it available in the Living Atlas. Just go to the Arcgis Living Atlas webpage and look for the Contribute button, or get in touch with us. Thank you, and now back to you, Scott.
As a foundation to all this work, ArcGIS has been designed as a fundamentally open platform, supporting many different data and IT standards, as well as providing access for web, mobile and desktop developers. This all allows us to support many different deployment and use patterns through integration, extension and customization. We'll be coming back to the Tech Solutions team for more updates a little later on, but remember, as we mentioned earlier, there are additional Esri technology videos available from the International UC, and we'll be sharing links to some of those in the Information tab. Right now though, we want to look at another great New Zealand story. For our second keynote this morning, we're very lucky to be joined by Superintendent Eric Tibbott of the New Zealand Police. Superintendent Tibbott has had a long and impressive career both in the UK and the New Zealand Police Forces. Over the past 5 years, he's had a focus upon prevention, helping in the prevention of many types of crime and harm at a national level. We've asked him here today, however, to share with us his insights into how ArcGIS has been contributing to his area of focus for the last 6 months, namely the all-of-government COVID-19 response for New Zealand.
Kia ora tātou. My name's Eric Tibbott. I'm a Superintendent with New Zealand Police, the National Manager of Prevention. I have a portfolio for family violence, mental health, youth, alcohol harm reduction, and many other components. I appreciate the invite to talk to the New Zealand Esri User Conference, and I also acknowledge the New Zealand Esri User Group invite to speak to the conference. First and foremost, I'm not a geospatial practitioner. I've got a background in intelligence, but I understand the value of geospatial analysis to major events and also to business as usual. Now, in the initial response to COVID-19 in New Zealand, I was seconded to the COVID group based up in Lambton Quay in Wellington. So I was providing advice to Mike Bush, who at the time was the Commissioner of New Zealand Police and who has since moved on and is now part of the all-of-government COVID response. And we were discussing how we could best enable an intelligence component for all of government and the NCMC response, and how we could provide the ability for staff from various different agencies sharing the same information, using the same information, collecting once and using many times. So what we did, we started to do a little bit of thinking. What we wanted to do is bring the power of spatial analytics to the all-of-government response, but we also wanted to make sure that we provided a secure system, a secure platform where all government agencies were confident in the security aspects of that platform, and government in particular was confident in the way we were going to use that system. We were thinking future-proofing, and so with ArcGIS, some of the information we've got is point data and can reveal private information. So because we were dealing with people COVID positive results and the like, we were very, very careful in how we built the security around the system. And this was in the early stages of just talking about what we could build. We wanted to make sure that the system was accessible by other staff from other agencies, and also that we collect him once and use him many, many times. Part of the conversation, and you guys will get this, ArcGeospatial is not about a dot on a map. It's more than that. ArcGeospatial provides a rich picture of what's happening by using many, many layers. And the slide that you're seeing currently is a slide I used really to sell all of government ArcGIS to the executives, to Ashley Bloomfeld and to Mike Bush and the other executive, to say, what does it mean when you bring different layers of information across a problem? What are the questions we're trying to answer? And as we move through this presentation, you'll see how I managed to use this information to promote what we were trying to achieve. Now, we also needed sort of controls and guiding principles, because it was really important when you're exploring and exploiting something really new, a system where different people from different agencies can get access, that you've got the right governance structures in place, the right executive members who've got oversight, can provide some guidance and provide assurance within those agencies. And also we want to ensure that the culture and behavior of different agencies working together was values based, that the only way you accessed that information was if you were part of COVID response, that you had an appropriate manager approval, and that pinpoint data users would, that's if we went to that space, would sign a position description, which meant that they were going to handle private information in the correct way, and also an auditing space. CNA, security risk assessment, was really important, and in amongst this we had lots of conversations with John Edwards, the Privacy Commissioner, because there was quite a lot of nervousness, because police were leading this build and using this system, but it's not a criminal type of activity that we were looking at. It's a Ministry of Health approach, so there was some nervousness around there. And touching on why police were leading, we had an opportunity to leverage off an existing system that police were ready to release back in May. Police have got a system called RIOD, Real-Time Intelligence for Operational Deployment. It's a system which contains information, intelligence, but it also has geospatial capability, Esri mapping. And what we did is we used the opportunity for lifting the Esri mapping component and delivering it in a way that people from other agencies could access on a government device, government log on with multi-factor authentication. So we managed to get enough support from the executives to start to build this system. And I won't go into too much detail around the build, but we managed to deliver an all-of-government ArcGIS system within a matter of 7 days. And the landing page you see before you here is my landing page. The landing page is quite basic to start with. Because it's a police system, it's got the police logo, but it's important to understand that this is an all-of-government system. People from other agencies can access it. People from other agencies, if they develop a range of questions or requirements, we can build those maps. If agencies feel that they've got people who are sufficiently skilled in geospatial analysis, they can be brought into this system to start building maps. So the map you see in front of me here is the very first map that we developed, and it's a screenshot I took from yesterday, so you can see total active cases on the right hand side, 129. That information is secure. It's brought in from ESR, and it's updated every hour, and we've got a range of information: the total confirmed, probable, suspected, recovered and fatal cases. Now, as we move through this sort of presentation, you'll see how I managed to sort of convince the executives what the power of geospatial is and how we can use geospatial to make really good, valid decisions and recommendations. And I'll move on to the next slide. So this is a slide which we prepared early on in COVID phase 1 response, and as you can see, at that time we had 772 confirmed cases across the country, and I was trying to get different departments to start using geospatial to make decisions and think about what is the impact on COVID positive cases. Where are they happening? What are the layers of information can you bring in? So as you can see the layers there, we've got locations, and COVID, it was that mesh block, demographics, police boundaries. And I recollect doing a presentation to Ashley Bloomfield, which talked around using the map and starting to see if we can see patterns. And this is just a basic layman's approach, which I thought was really good, because I, like many of the executives, are not as familiar with geospatial as Esri user group attendees will be. But because I've got sufficient information and understanding and knowledge, I can promote what geospatial analysts do. So using this map, which was built by a geospatial team, I focused in on matter. And if you look just to the center of the screen, you see a grouping of COVID mesh block cases. What we did is we explored that in a bit more detail, and these are 5 different views of that location. So we knew there was a cluster in Matamata, and on the top left hand picture there, you'll see that we've got information from hospitals. So it was really important to understand the capacity of hospitals to deal with the volumes of people we're likely to see who are requiring ICU. And in that space, you'll see there's a little mesh block there that tells us the total beds in that hospital is 32. So for me, it was around front footing potential. We knew that at that time we had about 22 COVID positive cases in Matamata. Have we got the capability and capacity to manage that volume? And so it takes a conversation away from it's a dot on a map to it's more meaningful. There's a bunch of information within there that has a lot of meaning. If you now look down on the left-hand side to the bottom slide, this is where we start to look at populations over the age of 70. Health had advised that that was a really at-risk location. And when you look at the purple and the sort of the light purple colorations, they are different volumes of people over the age of 70. And we know we've got some rest homes in that location. So when you look at that bottom screen there, you'll see that the proximity of a vulnerable community to COVID positives. For me, that was a question that I posed to health. What are we doing to protect those elderly people, those people who are in a vulnerable population? We need to do something significantly different with that population than we do in populations that haven't got a close proximity. You'll also note on that screen that we've got 2 supermarkets, New World and Countdown. Now, it's a rural location. What are we doing in those 2 spaces? If you look at the top right map, you'll see that we've got supermarkets and COVID positives within a proximity, a 2-kilometer proximity. So for me, it is, we've got information now we can share with partners. We can share with those 2, the managers of those 2 supermarkets, to say, because there's a high level of risk and contagion in that location, can we change your business model? So instead of getting your consumers and customers coming into the location, can we do a delivery to customers? Can we change that model? And then it takes the question even higher. If we say get pushback from those supermarkets to say we can't afford changing our model because it's such a significant issue and a significant risk, can we then secure funding from government to support a change in the business model based upon the risk profile of those 2 locations? So that was a really meaningful conversation. It was a presentation to the NCMC, to the relevant managers there, and there were some offline conversations afterwards to say this is a really powerful tool. It's powerful because it answers questions which is just beyond police. And they started to think about what other information, what other layers we can start to build into these maps. The team then started to reach out to health, also district health boards, civil defence, emergency management, and our other partners, because we were quite aware that there was a range of reports, static reports being produced by different agencies. And because not all those agencies are using live data, real-time data, there's a discrepancy between say a static map that was printed out in the morning and a real-time map that was available at lunchtime. So what we said is that if you tell us your requirements at the center, we can start building a range of maps, and we can give you screenshots of those maps, so we're all using the same information source. It also means managing the relationship relationships with the suppliers of information is quite easy because you've got one point of truth and maybe one contract to write up with a provider of that information. And again, we had the Joint Insights Group, which was providing information not only to NCMC but to government. And the information you can see on this slide here is the type of information that was in the reports that were going up daily to the Minister's office. Because we'd spent a lot of time convincing the executive that, you know, the power of geospatial, we had a lot of confidence in the reporting that we were able to provide. And again, here is another map. These were cases and isolation breaches. Static maps are fine. They're okay for maybe an executive to have a look at, but really it is the real-time maps that you can get into and examine and start to look at things in a different way. So what you're seeing in front of you here is the interactive map that we built for compliance. And the approach to compliance, whether it's a gathering breach or a business breach or an individual breach, we brought together a multi-agency team. So it's not just a police approach to policing or managing a breach. It's an MBA approach as well. So if a business is breaching, MBA have got a role to play. So a multi-agency team were brought together to manage those breaches. One of the things they needed to look at was how can we monitor what's going on geospatially and what information can that provide us. So as you see on the screen there, this is a screenshot some time ago. It talked about the number of breaches, what type of breach they were, a percentage of those breaches, and then we could manipulate that information to a day, 7 days, 30 days, to a police district, a police area, a police boundary. And so when you've got limited resources across the country, you're looking for the best opportunity to deploy those resources. So if you're seeing a hotspot in a certain location, maybe you want to focus more on that than on another place where you might only have 1 or 2 breaches. So this was a really useful map that was presented and was used by the COVID compliance team. This is one of the sort of later maps. So this is the quarantine, the managed isolation and quarantine. As you can see, this is a really, really powerful map. It's got the number of occupied rooms in the quarantine locations across New Zealand, the number of unoccupied rooms, rooms that are currently in cleaning, and staff rooms available. There's a huge amount of information here. And when we start to see this, if you look at it strategically, big picture, we'll then start to think, well, how many New Zealanders overseas are intended to come back to New Zealand? When do they intend to come back? And have we got sufficient capacity in the locations to manage that? So I know outside this there is conversations about how do you manage the transit of New Zealanders from overseas into New Zealand, ensure that we've got capacity in the quarantine facilities to manage that, and then to see whether or not, what does that look like planning over the next several months when you've got a 14-day quarantine. Really, really impressive map. It's really informed decision makers, and the more and more we use the map to answer different questions, the bigger the appetite becomes. The next dashboard really is just a subset. As you see on the top there, there's dashboards within dashboards. This is the number of incidents. So it's really important, especially for Ashley Bloomfield and the Prime Minister, if they're talking around, you know, what's happening, have we got the capacity to deal with the 14-day quarantine, and then are we managing those facilities? Because if there's a breach or an incident, that's a potential political problem that the Prime Minister's got to answer. So this is a really powerful use of that information to inform the executives and the decision makers. So for me, what were the success factors here? Sometimes luck's on your side. So in terms of the ability to deploy and build an all-of-government ArcGIS system, leveraged off an existing platform that we were just about to deploy. So there's a little bit of luck involved in being able to deliver something very quickly. But for me, the most important thing is the relationships and the partnerships. So police has a very close relationship with Eagle and Intergen, 2 of the vendors who assisted the build and built this system for us. Now that relationship is based upon trust and also the knowledge of each other's business. So Eagle understands police work, as does Intergen. Police understand what services that Eagle and Intergen can deliver. So with that trust and that ability, we were able to stand up the system pretty quickly. But then it's around the ability of our people to use the system. So we had a range of staff from different organisations in New Zealand who were geospatial experts. But we also leveraged off the training that Eagle could provide us. And so with that, we build up very quickly the skills, knowledge and experience of our people within the COVID response to start building this mapping capability. So that's really important, we have the right people. But there's opportunities here. There's opportunities beyond COVID. Now, at the moment, I'm looking to try to establish ownership of the all of government geospatial platform, because it is a platform that we can all use. As I said earlier on, collect once, use many times. It can provide a real good, robust, in-depth analysis of a range of issues brought together into a map, which will later inform a decision-making document, which enables our decision makers to make robust either financial decisions, deployment decisions, risks, opportunities. It's really important that more people are aware of the existence of the all-of-government geospatial system. It's a secure system. We can partition the system off, so it's a need-to-know basis. It's a really fantastic bit of kit. And I'd just like to acknowledge the sterling effort by the Eagle technology team, the Intergen team, and the geospatial analytical team at the all of government site. And one last thing, I think as practitioners in the use of ArcGIS, it's important that we have these continuous conversations with our executive. It's important that they understand the power of geospatial, and we're all leaders in geospatial. So every opportunity we get, we should talk about this. The lift conversation, the 5-minute conversation, it's worth building up that knowledge and understanding within our executives so they understand the power of geospatial and the existence of the all of government geospatial system. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Again, it's a privilege to be able to talk to you about this, and keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric. I know that I found his story fascinating both on a personal and on a professional level, as the ArcGIS technology being used to keep New Zealand safe right now is the same technology we're using in our own organisations. We're now at the end of the first half, so please take this opportunity to stretch your legs, grab a hot drink or a snack. Don't forget to check out the sponsors area, and to get back here, just click on the Plenary Stream button. We'll be starting again in 30 minutes with some more great stories from around New Zealand. On the other hand, if you do choose to stay here on this stream, then we've arranged a fun quiz to keep you entertained. Thank you.